This my shit right here.
The champions of CONCACAF are back, and in just 7 days, the United States is set to begin their road to the 2022 FIFA World Cup. In the first of 5 qualifying windows, the United States will play 3 matches, first in San Salvador against El Salvador, before returning home on September 5th to play Canada in Nashville, before flying to San Pedro Sula, Honduras to play Honduras. With these 3 games coming up, we decided to turn into Greg Berhalter and pick our own 28-man roster for this first window of CONCACAF World Cup qualifying. First, just some quick notes about the roster. It's 28 players because of COVID and travel restrictions, and we're picking the best available roster. So without further ado, let's get into it. Goalkeepers, Zach Steffen. Zach Steffen is still ranked and regarded as the U.S. #1, but that's still under some question, as he's been the backup for Man City for just over 2 years now, and has been facing pressure from Horvath and Turner, who are both playing well. This could be a big camp for Steffen, and if he struggles, it could be the last time he sees the net for a little bit. Goalkeeper Ethan Horvath. After an absolute gem of a performance in the Nations League final against Mexico, Ethan Horvath has earned a transfer to Nottingham Forest and hasn't been playing that much of late, but is still deserving of a place in this roster. He's good backup, but I'd be shocked if I see him at all during this World Cup qualifying camp. Goalkeeper Matt Turner. After his standout performances in the Gold Cup, Matt Turner would have been called up to this team had David Ochoa declared for Mexico or not. As of right now, Turner is the only keeper on this roster starting for his club. Although he's in the MLS, he's definitely the best goalie in MLS right now, so this isn't a knock on him, and if he could see some minutes, but it's highly unlikely. Defenders, center back John Brooks. This pick is nothing but a foregone conclusion. John Brooks will be in this roster. He's been playing at a high level for Wolfsburg over the last couple seasons and has actually scored in a World Cup against Ghana. So he's the best defender the U.S. has and is a no-brainer for this roster. Center back Chris Richards. While John Brooks is the United States' current best defender, Chris Richards is the United States center back with the most ceiling and could be the U.S.'s best in the future. The current Bayern defender impressed on loan at Hoffenheim last year and is currently Bayern's third choice center back, which is definitely good enough to get in this roster, and it doesn't matter that he's not playing. Center back Mark McKenzie. Ever since making the switch from the Philadelphia Union to Genk in Belgium in early 2021, I think it's fair to say McKenzie's been a little bit inconsistent. However, he's still very young and very new in European football, so that's to be expected. I don't expect him to get many minutes in this tournament, but he should be a solid backup option. Center back Matt Miazga. Fresh off a loan move to La Liga club Alaves, Miazga will probably come into this camp as once again a second choice, but is still a solid option. Center back Miles Robinson. Robinson's breakout performances in the Gold Cup earned him a spot on this roster. He is a very, very good 1v1 defender and is decent on the ball for a center back. He's actually pretty good, in fact, able to pick long passes and play short if necessary. He'll probably start this tournament as a backup, but the Atlanta United center back could see some minutes at some point. Outside back, Serginho Dest. Is Serginho Dest a left back? Is he a right back? No one really knows, but wherever he plays, it's Dest time. He's technical and ability on the ball could be exactly what the U.S. needs to break down CONCACAF low-block defenses during qualifying. Right back, Reggie Cannon. Reggie Cannon played in both the Nations League and Gold Cup final. I think that tells you that he's probably going to be in this roster. I mean, he's still in Portugal for Boa Vista and has pretty much earned the complete trust of head coach Greg Berhalter, and he's a pretty damn good player too. Right back, Brian Reynolds. The second straight FC Dallas homegrown player in our list, Reynolds is currently playing for AS Roma in Serie A, and despite not playing much this season, I think he's definitely good enough to be in this roster, and getting him some minutes in this camp could be exactly what he needs to get his confidence up. Left back, Anthony Robinson. The Fulham left back, Anthony Robinson, has played pretty well for Fulham in the past. Last year they were in the Premier League, and despite their relegation, Robinson was one of their lone bright spots. He's a good player going forward, very quick, and has good delivery with his left foot, but can sometimes struggle 1v1 defending. Left back, George Bello. This isn't a popular pick for many, but I just rate George Bello higher than Sam Vines. The main knock on Bello is that he's not good enough defensively, but I actually think he's better defensively than he's given credit for. And going forward, he offers a lot more than players like Vines or other options. Let's take a look at some of the defenders who didn't make this roster. Sam Vines. A lot of people have this guy in their rosters, but I just think Bello's better than Vines personally. He doesn't offer as much going forward as Bello, and defensively, Vines is just as shaky as Bello. After strong performances in the Gold Cup, people expect James Sands to get called up. I'm not really behind that. I don't think he was great, and I think Miles Robinson may have carried him a little bit. I also don't have DeAndre Yedlin on my roster because I took Bryan Reynolds instead. Yedlin is struggling to make Galatasaray's team in Turkey. Reynolds is struggling to make Roma's first team in Italy and Serie A. There's a difference there, and while you could argue Yedlin could be a more useful player right now, Bryan Reynolds definitely has the higher ceiling. And lastly, we need to talk about Tim Ream. Tim Ream is not going to be in my roster, and he shouldn't be in anyone's roster. His national team career should be over. No offense, Tim, you've had a great national team career, but it's time to move on. Midfielders. Defensive midfielder Tyler Adams. Tyler Adams is pretty much a water bug in front of the back four that just runs around and protects everything. He's one of the many young leaders on this team and could be a potential captain in the future. Defensive midfielder Kellen Acosta. Despite Berhalter playing Acosta at the 8, I think he's better as a 6 and a defensive midfielder, and the Gold Cup proved that. He played tremendous as a number 6 and was one of the main reasons why the U.S. won the tournament. Center midfielder Weston McKennie. McKennie is a very rare player. There are very few players who work as hard as McKennie and have the technical ability to match. McKennie has the drive and ability to play anywhere across the midfield, and is one of our best players and emerging leaders. Center midfielder Gio Reyna. Gio Reyna has often been played on the wing or out wide for the U.S., but he's been playing center midfielder for Dortmund this year, and if you're playing central midfield for Dortmund, you're good enough to play it for the U.S. That's a fact. Central midfielder Sebastian Lletget. Under Greg Berhalter, Sebastian Lletget has the most minutes out of any outfield player. That means he's going to be in this roster, and he might end up starting, but at the very least, he'll be a rotational player or an often used sub. Central midfielder Julian Green. The wild ride of Julian Green's career continues. At 18, he was scoring in a World Cup, and now, just 7 years later, he hasn't been called up to the U.S. men's national team in just over 2 years. Greg Berhalter said that he's wanted to call him in for a while, and it wouldn't be a shock to see him get called up in this window. Central midfielder Luca De La Torre. De La Torre is currently playing in the Eredivisie for Heracles, and may not get called up because he turned down a call up to the Gold Cup, but I would call him up because he has the technical ability that several players in this player pool don't. Now let's take a look at some of the midfielders that were left off my roster. Yunus Musa. I would have taken Musa over someone like De La Torre, Lletget, or probably Julian Green, but he's currently injured and won't be ready for the qualifiers, so I didn't select him. Jackson Yueill. Jackson Yueill should not be in this roster, and right now could be in the same category as Tim Ream. He needs to start playing better in the MLS before he can get called up to the USMNT again. Gianluca Busio. Despite a fairly good performance from Busio in the Gold Cup and a recent move to Venezia Serie A, he's not quite at the level of some of these midfielders yet, but he could be there in time. The last omission was Eric Williamson, and I really liked Eric Williamson's performances at the Gold Cup, but similar to Busio, there's just players at a higher level than him right now. Forwards, left winger Christian Pulisic. Christian Pulisic is probably the first name on this roster. He's Captain America and is one of the best players that the U.S. has ever produced, so yeah, he's on this roster. Left winger Brenden Aaronson. There are some long-term questions about what Brenden Aaronson's best position is for the U.S. MNT going forward, but I think at least for right now, he'll be the backup on the left wing for Christian Pulisic. The former Philadelphia Union Academy grad has been excelling in Austria ever since moving to RB Salzburg in January, and he's a shoo-in for the roster. He's probably the U.S.'s most underrated player right now. Right wing Tim Weah. Tim Weah had one hell of a year. He won Ligue 1 with Lille, then won the CONCACAF Nations League with the U.S., and then just won the Super Cup with Lille again. He's has some questions about his consistency, but he should be in this roster, and he's a pretty good player. Right wing, Conrad De La Fuente. De La Fuente is a quick, exciting, and young player. He can beat pretty much anyone off the dribble and has incredible foot skills. Fresh off a move to Ligue 1 with Olympique Marseille, he's looking incredible so far and could be another player that the US could use this summer in World Cup qualifying. Left wing / striker, Matthew Hoppe. Now, Matthew Hoppe is a striker and that is his best position, but Greg Berhalter insists on playing him on the left wing for some reason. Hoppe's had an interesting summer. Despite being one of the best players in the Gold Cup, he's yet to receive a transfer from Schalke, but he should soon, and despite that, is definitely good enough to get in this roster. Striker, Josh Sargent. Josh Sargent's started for the US at the World Cup qualifiers. Straight off a move to the Premier League with newly promoted Norwich City, he's finally out of Bremen and finally has teammates that can give him and pass him the ball. He could be in for a big year. Striker, Gyasi Zardes. I know this isn't a popular pick, but Gyasi Zardes was honestly better than Daryl Dike at the Gold Cup, and no one can really deny that. He's earned a spot on this roster despite not being loved by many. Striker, Jordan Pefok. Jordan Pefok is a target man striker the United States can use, and he's going to be useful because of his touch in and around the 18. He actually has good feet in and around the penalty area, and could be useful for the US off the bench despite not being a starter at World Cup qualifying. Now let's take a look at the forwards who missed out on this roster for World Cup qualifying. Daryl Dike. This is probably the toughest selection I had to make. Daryl Dike and Gyasi Zardes are like neck and neck for the third striker spot, and just because of Zardes' performances in the Gold Cup, I ended up giving it to him, but just because Dike had high expectations coming into the Gold Cup and didn't really deliver, while Zardes in limited minutes actually did alright. Nick Gioacchini. Nick Gioacchini played pretty well in the Gold Cup despite not really starting and only coming off the bench. He's a good player playing for Caen in the French second division, but there are just players that are at a higher level than him right now, similar to Busio. Lastly, we have Paul Arriola. Arriola is injured right now and likely won't be back. He was injured in the Gold Cup, and honestly, I don't know how he played the rest of the tournament. He had a pulled hamstring pretty much the entire final and played 90 minutes, so respect, but you're not going to be in this roster. Sorry, Paul. That's all we have for you guys today. If you agree or disagree with the roster, please let me know in the comments. If you have anything else to say, please let us know. As always, thanks for watching, and have a good one, guys. Let's enjoy World Cup qualifying.